She was 18, beautiful, and full of dreams. A small-town pageant queen, recently crowned Miss Rosamond, with her whole future ahead of her. But on a quiet night in 1978, everything changed. Tana Woolley was found brutally murdered in her own apartment. There were no signs of forced entry, no clear motive, just a young life taken far too soon, and a trail that went cold almost instantly. Her family waited for answers. The town moved on, and for 24 years her case gathered dust, a haunting reminder of justice denied. But DNA doesn't forget, and decades later one sample would finally reveal the chilling truth. What really happened to Tana that night? Why was the investigation silent for so long? And who was hiding in plain sight all along? Subscribe to Uncovering Crime, and join us as we bring light to the darkness of this long-forgotten case.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a really chilling story. It's the 1978 murder of Tana Woolley in Rosemead, California.
Yeah, a young woman, so much potential, her life just cut short. And the mystery of who did it, well, that lasted for over 20 years.
It's just staggering. This case, it really throws a spotlight on, the agony of unsolved crimes for families.
Absolutely, decades of grief, uncertainty, and then finally a breakthrough. It came from sheer persistence mixed with huge leaps in science.
Our source material for this, it's a document we've just called Pasted Text, lays out the key events of that long road to getting some answers.
That's right. So what we want to do here is really unpack this tragedy.
Exactly. Look at the initial shock, those long years without answers, and then, what finally turned the tide.
We'll see how relentless police work, and crucially, forensic advancements finally brought, well, maybe not closure, but some justice for Tana's family.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The discovery, it's just heartbreaking.
It really is. October 25th, 1978. Rosemead, which is in Los Angeles County. The source text mistakenly says Kern County at one point, but it was LA.
Right.
Tana's mother, Helen, gets this call. Tana didn't show up for work, and Helen goes to her daughter's apartment and finds the absolute worst.
Before we get to that awful moment, tell us a bit about Tana. Who was she?
Well, the picture painted is of someone really special. Born in '58, oldest of 4 kids, grew up right there in Rosemead.
Okay.
Her dad worked at the local Air Force base. Her mom had an admin job at the high school. Tana herself sounds like she was, cheerful, charismatic, very close to her family.
And accomplished too, right?
Yeah, definitely. Involved in school clubs, a Masonic youth group. She graduated with honors in '76. Represented her organization statewide in '77.
And then Miss Rosemead in 1978. Wow.
Yeah. At the time of her death, she was working as a secretary at Nash, believe it or not, and also studying education at college. She wanted to be a special needs teacher.
Just incredible potential. It makes what happened even harder to comprehend.
Absolutely. She'd recently moved into her own apartment, that first taste of independence.
But the source mentions she was feeling uneasy.
Yes, she'd apparently told her mom and friends about some suspicious men hanging around the complex. She felt unsafe.
Which explains the detail about her boyfriend, Ricky.
Exactly. He didn't just walk her to her door at night. He waited until she was physically inside and locked up. That says a lot about the level of concern even then.
So that morning, Tana doesn't arrive at work. Her boss calls Helen.
Right. Helen goes over, finds the front door slightly open, the frame damaged, clear signs of forced entry.
And inside?
The apartment was in disarray. And then she found Tana, severely beaten, partially unclothed, strangled with her own blue sock.
Just horrific. Police arrive. What were the initial findings?
Well, it was immediately clear it was sexual assault and murder. But the big challenge right away was forensics.
How so?
Back in '78, the technology just wasn't there. No usable fingerprints, no DNA evidence they could really work with at the scene.
Tough start for investigators.
Very tough. And there was that chilling detail from a neighbor, hearing muffled screams the night before, but not calling the police.
Oh, wow. A mischance, maybe?
Perhaps. The seriousness of it all meant the FBI got involved fairly early on.
And they developed a profile of the likely killer.
They did. The profile suggested a tall, strong young man, probably had a history of violence, rejection issues, intelligent maybe, but deeply frustrated.
The starting point, I guess.
It was. Gave him something to work with. Of course, standard procedure, they questioned the boyfriend, Ricky.
But he was cleared?
Yeah, his alibi checked out, witnesses confirmed where he was, but he did give them something important.
What we got?
He mentioned a neighbor, someone who had been harassing Tana, and that lead eventually pointed towards Larry Hazlett.
Okay, Larry Hazlett.
Who was he? He was 56 at the time, a former teacher, lived incredibly close to Tana. Like, the source says his window was just 10 feet from her bedroom window.
10 feet.
Yeah.
Unsettlingly close.
Extremely. And apparently the family hired a private investigator who zeroed in on Hazlett pretty early.
Even though he didn't quite fit that initial FBI profile age-wise?
Right. The profile suggested younger, but Hazlett had this reputation in the complex, apparently, for inappropriate behavior. That likely drew attention.
So the police talked to him.
They did. He claimed he was out shopping when the murder likely occurred, but nobody could confirm that alibi.
What about forensics back then? Did they test him?
They took samples, but the DNA analysis available in 1978 didn't link him, so he was let go.
And then he just disappeared.
Pretty much. A few months later, he vanished, which, looking back seems highly suspicious.
Absolutely. So the case goes cold.
It does. And for the Woolley family, unimaginable. 2 decades of waiting, hoping.
But they never gave up. Helen, Tana's mom, and later her sister Taryn, they kept calling the police.
Incredible persistence, just constantly keeping Tana's memory and the need for answers alive. For 20 years.
Amazing dedication. Then 1999, what happened?
Well, it seems the huge media focus on the O.J. Simpson trial, and particularly the DNA evidence discussion around it, sparked an idea.
DNA becoming more mainstream knowledge.
Exactly. Taryn suggested, hey, what about reanalyzing the evidence from Tana's case with this new technology?
And that got the ball rolling again.
It did. A detective named Chris Spear picked up the cold case. And importantly, digging through the old files, he found that original request for Larry Hazlett's fingerprints from way back.
Connecting the old suspicions to the new effort.
Precisely. And Spear didn't just stop there. He really started digging into Hazlett's life after he disappeared.
What did he find?
A pretty disturbing pattern. A long criminal history, robbery, assault, and significantly, multiple accusations and other sexual assault cases over the years.
So not just a one-off suspicion anymore, a pattern.
A clear pattern. Spear eventually tracked Hazlett down to Sacramento. He was living there working as a music teacher, believe it or not.
Wow. So Spear approached him.
He did, went to see him. And Hazlett, maybe feeling safe after all those years, voluntarily gave a new DNA sample.
A critical mistake on his part.
Absolutely fatal for him, legally speaking, because this time the technology was far, far better.
And they got a match.
Bingo! They retested the evidence from Tana's apartment, specifically stains on her bedspread, and the advanced DNA analysis came back with a match. To Larry Hazlett.
Undeniable.
Statistically, yeah. The source material stresses the odds of it being anyone else are astronomically small. It proved he was there.
Okay, but presence isn't always proof of murder.
Yeah.
Could he argue a consensual encounter?
That's always a potential defense strategy.
Yeah.
But here's where Hazlett tripped himself up again. During questioning after the DNA match, he completely denied ever knowing Tana Woolley, ever meeting her, ever being in her apartment.
So he directly contradicted any possibility of a consensual explanation.
Exactly. It pretty much destroyed that defense before it could even be raised, made his presence there look entirely incriminating.
And the investigators kept building the case.
They did. Really thorough work. They managed to track down 4 other women.
Other victims.
Women who had encounters with Hazlett years before, with strikingly similar stories. He'd be polite, charming initially, then turn aggressive and violent once alone with them.
And they agreed to testify. Decades later.
Incredibly brave of them, yes. They agreed to come forward. Their testimony would be crucial to show the jury this wasn't an isolated incident, but a pattern of predatory behavior.
That's powerful. Any other forensic breakthroughs?
Yes, one more key piece. Remember the sock used to strangle Tana?
Of course. Horrifying detail.
Well, microscopic analysis, again using neurotechniques, found skin cells on that sock and the DNA from those cells. It matched Larry Hazlett.
Directly linking him not just to the scene, but to the murder weapon itself.
Precisely. A very strong chain of evidence now.
So it finally goes to trial. June 2002.
Must have been incredibly intense for the Woolley family after all that time, and the trial itself had some drama. The source mentions a surprise witness.
Oh, who was that?
Another woman came forward during the trial. She testified about an encounter where Hazlett had tried to aggressively force her into a date, just adding another layer to that pattern.
So the prosecution's case was built on
2 main pillars, really. First, painting Hazlett as a serial predator through the powerful testimonies of those other women. Second, the absolutely solid DNA evidence.
The bedspread stains, the sock.
Right. And they had an FBI expert reconstruct the likely events of that night. Hazlett watching Tana, knowing her routine, maybe seeing Ricky leave.
Forcing his way in.
Exactly, the assault. And then using her own sock to strangle her, perhaps trying to prevent identification, although obviously leaving trace DNA behind.
And the jury.
They deliberated for about a week. Then, in May 2004, the verdict came back. Guilty of aggravated sexual assault and first-degree murder.
Justice, finally. What was the sentence?
June 14th, 2004, Larry Hazlett was sentenced to death. He was then transferred to San Quentin State Prison.
How did Tana's mother, Helen, react after fighting for so long?
The source shares a really poignant image. Helen apparently got the news of the verdict while she was visiting Tana's grave.
Oh.
Yeah, nothing brings Tana back, but getting that verdict, knowing the person responsible was finally held accountable, it must have brought some measure of peace, justice served, because of her and Taryn's persistence.
It's an incredible story of resilience. So, wrapping this up, what should you, our listener, take away from this deep dive?
I think it really hammers home a few things. One, the sheer dedication required in some investigations. Detective Spear, the family, never giving up.
Definitely. And the power of science, forensic tech, especially DNA, completely changed the game for cold cases like this.
Absolutely. And finally, the impact of a family's unwavering love and pursuit of justice. They kept Tana's case from being forgotten. It's a powerful reminder that even cases that seem impossible, that go cold for decades, they can still be solved.
Yeah. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Consider how someone's past actions, even things they weren't caught for at the time, can eventually surface and become critical pieces of the puzzle years later. Patterns matter.
That's a great point. It speaks volumes about how the past can echo into the present, especially when seeking justice after so long. A truly remarkable, though tragic, case.